Luke 24. Luke 24. Starting verse 13. And reading to verse 35. Luke 24, starting in verse 13. Now that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were walking with each other about everything. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed the things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. But they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you were walking along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and the rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early in the morning, but did not find the body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it was just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus." He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and take entry into glory?" Beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if they were going further. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took the bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us when he talked with us along the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those of them assembled together and said, "It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told what had happened on the way and how Jesus had recognized by them when he broke the bread. May the Lord bless the reading of his word. Well, I've entitled this The Journey because really and truly, this is a journey. A journey in many different ways, and a journey we'll look into. And when we think of a journey, we think, of course, of the destination. And I know a lot of times in culture, it's always been the destination. Where are you going? How are you getting there? What's going to happen when you get there? Are you going for business? Are you going for pleasure? What's going on there? And then lately it's been, it's not the destination, it's the journey. It's the journey. It's the things you see, the things you do, and all the rest of this. And I think the latest thing I heard, which I think really sums it up well, and I want to read it out here to make sure I don't misspoke. And I watched a gentleman, and he said, "It is not the journey, and it's not the destination. It's neither the journey nor the destination. It is who you become on the journey." And I love that. It's who we become on the journey. We're on this journey called life. And who do we become? And I love this story and how we see these two disciples and what they become on the journey and how they change on the journey and all the different things that are part of it. And we see this wonderful account of the Emmaus story, the disciples going there. And also within it, we get a kind of a retrospective of Jesus' ministry. We get the consistency of characters. We get a geographical reference, so we know where it's happening. We get the time that it's continuing this same day, emphasis on the third day, and we get a fulfillment of prophecy. So all of this comes together. And we see how Jesus uses what he said before to drive the point home. He says, Jesus says to them, I've told you these things before. And many times when he was on his earthly ministry, he told them what was to happen and how it was going to happen. And we saw the different reactions that we got from the disciples and the people around. Some would not accept it and some did not understand it. But it's all come together. And we see how the women are even mentioned, that they went to the tomb and found the stone rolled away, which we looked at Easter morning, and how the tomb was empty. And then we even get it. Not a specific name mentioned of Peter going to the tomb, but we also see that there was a company that went there and saw that the tomb was empty. And these two disciples are still trying to, I think, reason and rationalize in their own minds what has transpired and what is going on. And I think they have the same tendency I think we do in this day and age, is we always go to the negative. We always go to the negative, don't we? I mean, we don't always do it, but many times when things don't go our way, it's because of this, it's because of that. And we go to the negative. And they're going to the negative too. And even though the women had come back and they'd said that they saw him and he was risen, they still don't understand. And all the different things that they go through, their eyes are not open yet, as they say, as we will get into. That they witnessed these things, but they didn't see them, if that's something you could say. So what do we break it down into steps as the verses go by? They journey from Jerusalem. And there's the appearance of Jesus or a man along the way. They don't recognize him, but they have that interaction with him. And then he gives them a summary of things that have happened in Jerusalem to Jesus. And Jesus talks to them. He talks about the empty tomb, the vision, and that Jesus is alive. And we get these interpretation of things. And then, of course, we get that interaction at the table where he breaks the bread. And through some way and means that's not 100% specified, we get that idea that their eyes were opened. And they journey back to Jerusalem to tell the good news, to spread the good news. They're excited. So first of all, we look at the journey. And the disciples are still not getting it. These two at least. Even though Jesus has taken great pains to point out what was going on. So we pick up the story when they're on the road. And they're in the journey. And we see the hospitality they have. And it has and the different things that transpire, not only on the road, but inviting him in to stay. And then, of course, sitting down at the table with him. And we see how he talks about all the scripture and how it's fulfilled and how it helps them out and it informs them as they go along. So Luke, in telling the story, helps to understand it. He refers back to the first of the week and what's going on, and he really focuses on the two disciples and what they should understand and how they should understand. And I think it's just fantastic when things come together. All these things had to happen to carry out and to be done, to fulfill prophecy, to fulfill what Jesus has said. And we know the Easter story. We know what has transpired. So we have the women witness the empty tomb and they go back. But the disciples don't believe or don't understand. And we see this start to drift away. They start to drift away. And it's sad when people drift away. You know, I meet with a group of pastors and we pray together. And one pastor says he has a new person coming to his church, just been a Christian for a little while. But every time he tries to talk with them, this new person seems to be an expert in the field. He knows everything about a Christianity, and it's hard to talk with him. And hopefully over time, he'll know that there's more to understand and more to know. And I think that's the trouble with sometimes people, they don't understand everything, so that they drift away. And instead of trying to understand everything or trying to dive deeper into the text or be discipled. And we need to do that and help that out. And I think that's what's transpiring here. And I think Jesus knows what's transpiring here. So I love how he goes about doing it. He doesn't just appear to him and say, okay, this is your, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm right here. But he walks with them. He teaches them. He takes time with them. He listens to them, which is so fantastic. I love that time and time again. And I've probably said it many, many times. For anybody, not even a Christian, knows and believes that Jesus was a good teacher. And we see so many times when he just listened. Sometimes it's just so good just to listen so that we can get to know what's going on, get to know the people. And Jesus knew the people, knew what was going on, but he let them talk, let them fellowship with him. So, of course, we have the eyes are not open. And it doesn't just mean to sight, but to faith. Because we always have what they call a head knowledge, but we need a heart knowledge as well, so that we believe, that we can understand. So a stranger comes upon them and says, what's going on? Well, I heard you guys talking, what's going on? And we get this middle ground the two disciples pick. They don't say to him, well, you must not be from around here, you don't know what's going on. They first identify him as, well, if you're coming from Jerusalem and we're Jerusalem right here, how do you not know what has transpired? So they ask him, how do you not know this? Everybody knows it. And that starts the conversation. And I think Jesus is probably thinking to himself, yeah, I know, you don't know. You're the one that needs to know. So they talk about Jesus to Jesus, not knowing who he is. He said he was mighty in word and deed. And I'm sure they was well known of the teachings, of the miracles of Jesus and what had transpired. And the people Luke is writing for, us today and throughout the ages, would want to know and would know about Jesus. If you've gotten this far in the book, so to speak, you know who Jesus was. He was mighty, he was powerful, and we know what has transpired. So we see this interaction, and we see that he was powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. So they know who he was, they know who he was following, but they lack the interpretation of understanding what Jesus meant, of understanding what was to happen and why was it to happen, and that Jesus was fulfilling the prophecy. He needed to be rejected, suffer, and death, and then rise again, which he did, and which has transpired. And that is what they need to get. And they just think he's a prophet, but he's more than a prophet. And they'll know by the end of this interaction, as we read, that there is much more to it than just a prophet. And we see that they're stumbling. The disciples are stumbling because he died on the cross. He was supposed to save us. He was mighty in word and deed, but he was crucified and he died. And that's the stumbling that they fall into. Now, I have met many people who have read many passages and they stumble. And I'm sure you've met some people that say, I can't believe the Bible because of this one passage or this one phrase or this one verse even. And if it's taken out of context and not understood, it's easy to go that way. But I think as the cross acts as a stumbling block, we need to delve in deeper. We need to look deeper. We need to study deeper. We need to understand what's going on, or why is it said there, or what does it mean? And I think that's important as we go along. So we look at this situation, this interaction. We have them talking. It's on the third day, so it's that the same morning. A lot has transpired that day, and a lot is going on. And and they're talking with him, and he's teaching them, and he's taking time. They don't only mention Peter, but they said even other people have seen this empty tomb, and they think it's just done. It's finished. There's nothing more to it. They even refer to Jesus of Nazareth, and they know what he is, and they have that response, but they're just slow of heart. They're slow in their heart to have faith, to understand, and they have that failure to insight, to see it, to see what's going on. You know, if you've ever taught somebody or showed somebody something, I'm sure you've gone through this, and people struggle, whether it be a child or a friend or a relative, and then finally you get to the point that they understand. It's just like, yes, that's how you do this. That's how you take care of this. That's how it needs to get done. And we do this many, many times. And this is what Jesus is doing with them, step by step with them. And what does he do? He goes to the scriptures. He goes right back to Moses. And he starts talking about the history, talking about what was said, what was prophesied, and how it all comes together. And what a pleasure, what a joy it would be to have Jesus say that to you, to understand all that has transpired and why it has transpired. Because we're told this is a longer journey, so if they're walking, they will have a lot of time to talk, a lot of time to get the message right. You know, I was up in Fredericksburg. We had guys that used to work 6 days a week, and they would say to me, Pastor, Sunday's my only day to sleep in. I said, that's fine. But then they called me in the afternoon, could you take me to grocery shop? I don't have a car. Take me to grocery shopping. I said, fine, I'll take you to grocery shopping. Because it was a little ways to the grocery store. And they would heard the message all the way to the grocery store and all the way back. So they got the message anyway. So they got the message and the groceries. So that was good. They were getting fed 2 ways. How's that sound? But that's the way it is, that they have a long way to talk. And Jesus is talking about their history. And as we study Acts, we've seen that Stephen had done that. Paul had done that. Peter had done that. Talks to the people and says, this is where you are, and this is where you were, and this is where you need to be. And I think that's the same way we can witness to people. We can spread the good news. This is where you were, this is where you are, and that's where you need to be. And they may disagree with us, but we know we have the truth. We know that they can understand, or hope that they will understand. So it's a wonderful journey, and we see how they're changing on the journey. They might not know it yet, but they're hearing the information, they're processing it, and they're trying to get it understood and move along with that. And then we have the discovery. They say, it's getting late. Come with us. He builds up a rapport with them, so much so that they invite him in, that they would join them, invite him in. And then we see that beautiful breaking of the bread. He would have broke the bread as in the Last Supper. And even breaking the bread, when I was getting this message ready, I was thinking back to the wonderful miracle we have. That I always ask the children, this is the one I'm thinking they would always think first. He took 5 loaves and 2 fishes, looked up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke it, and then he gave that to the disciples to distribute to the people. As I said, the Good News Club kids, I always want that one. But they always tell me to water into wine. I don't know where they hear that off there, but you never get the fishes and the loaves. But they saw, the disciples see, and they realize, this is Jesus. This is the one. And didn't our hearts burn when he was telling us all this? Didn't our hearts burn? Wednesday night I shared with this, and it's intrigued me over my life. We as a society, we share with friends and relatives, don't we? We share so many things, good and bad. If we see a movie, you got to check out this movie. It was hilarious, or it was a really good story, or a good message was in there. If we read a book, regardless of the book, we either say, yes, you should read this book. I think it will help you out. Or yes, you can read this book. It was hilarious, or whatever the case may be. Or a restaurant. We go to a restaurant. We think, oh, wow, the food was great. The service was great. I got to tell my friends, relatives, if you're in the area, go to that restaurant. You'll enjoy it. You'll have a good meal. But it's the same thing when we spread the good news. But I've never had much pushback on a restaurant or a book or a movie. Maybe if they didn't like it, that's fine. But when we spread the good news, I've had so many times that people get pushback against spreading the good news. And I know there's different reasons why and everything, but I think the fact that we spread the good news, I think even a non-believer, their heart must be burning because they know it's the truth. They know it's transpired. So he breaks the bread, and there they understand. And then he disappears. We don't know how he disappears, if he left, whatever happened, but we know that he is gone. And then there they realize it. They realize all the things that he said, all the things that have transpired. Because sometimes I love reading murder mysteries and mystery novels. And sometimes you're reading through the whole novel and you're introduced to a person like, why are you telling me about this person? Or a situation or an event that happened years before the event you're reading about. And then at the end it's like, oh, that's what that person was doing. Oh, that's why he was talking with her or did that. And it all comes together. And I think it's the same way it came together for they went through the Moses, the prophets, and they were laid down, Jesus laid down everything for them. And then they all got it. They put it all together. And like anybody who gets it and they're excited about something, we got to go back to Jerusalem again. We got to tell the other 11. We got to tell them what happened. We got to tell them that Jesus is alive. So they, from one journey, and it shows you what they did on the journey and how they became on the journey. From drifting away, unbelieving, think it was all done, all finished, nothing left, that's it. We have to move on to something else or move on somewhere else. To meeting up with Jesus, Jesus taking the time, listening to them, but just telling them. And then once they sit down to eat, they realize, there it is. Everything is put together. We understand who he was. And we had an opportunity to spend this time with him. And he taught us, we need to go tell the others. Let us go tell the good news to others. And they go to the 11. And they tell them, yes, we have seen the Lord. He is risen. And there he is. He spent time with us. He taught us. And all the different things they would have shared with the disciples. And the interaction they had with him on the road. And of course, the breaking of the bread. They were participating with Jesus and fellowshipping with him at the table. And that's a fantastic way to look at it. The breaking of the bread, and that their eyes were opened. Their mind comprehended and their heart comprehended, which is a fantastic way to be and a way we need to be. I love this story. I love it because so many times we get caught up in different things. And we can doubt, and we can wonder why things are the way they are, or why they aren't the way they are. And what has happened, and what has transpired. But when we look to the Lord, and we have him, and we have that understanding, it's just a beautiful, beautiful way to look at it. And we too can look at it. As followers of Jesus Christ, we need to believe and tell others, and he will meet us where we are, and teach us to what we need to know. That is one thing we can learn from that message. So if you're here today, you want to give your life to the Lord, be baptized, or just want to come forward and pray with me. Say you too are drifting away and have doubts, but the Lord is there for you and wants you to have fellowship with you. He wants to break bread with you. Maybe not literally, but figuratively, as we go close our service today.